All right, welcome. Today, oh, there go the lights. Right off the bat. Good night. I'm just kidding. Okay. Kachtin and Nila Torah, you folks are on. I'm off. I'm in the darkness. We're starting our presentations. Uh, I think we'll record them. I don't know if we'll actually post these videos. I think maybe I'll send folks links to them. But we can decide that a little later. So I'll turn it over to you folks.
Naftish. Kachtin and I will share with you all today about our idea of building community. Some of the sessions we've been using for this recently are study groups or writing sessions, times to study audio and video recordings together, going on hikes and spending time out on the land and the water, and then just generally about developing language skill and encouraging speaking confidence. So for writing sentences, we meet twice a week on Mondays and Thursdays to do our homework together. And for that, we keep a shared Google document with headings to be able to track the dates. You can see on the left side, we have people's names so that we can know where our sentences are, depending on what day we're presenting. And this is just a screenshot from our homework about birds. Our process that we use together when we write our sentences, and we generally collaborate on them, is we'll begin with 4 or 5 very simple thoughts in English and then translate to Tlingit. Unless we already know right off the bat how to say that in Tlingit, then we'll just begin in the Tlingit language. So I used some example sentences I had here when our assignment was to write about birds. And I have 2 parakeets. So I wrote that I'm a bird mom and I have 2 birds, they're parakeets, and that they're noisy and they interrupt me in class. And so we'll focus in on my process for translating the 3rd sentence. They are loud voiced. Again, we try to keep it very simple. You could see that my sentences in English were extremely short. It was just 1 verb, 1 idea. So we generally start with the verbs. There is a little bit of change in thought between English and Tlingit in terms of what is a verb and what is a noun or adjective. So to be noisy is actually a verb. And so I found this by searching noisy in the online dictionary, and it brought us to the verb root gao. So now I have a verb root to work with. Then I switch over to the Curry Eggleston online verb database, and I find that verb root gao, and I expand it until I find one that's appropriate. So you can see the yellow highlighted middle option is loud voiced. If you click the yellow, then it'll expand into different verb modes. And this example includes the 1st person subject singular and the 3rd person singular subject. So ever since I was a beginner, the way that I would conjugate verbs is to actually just copy it from a previously conjugated list. And what I found was he, she, it is loud voiced. So I copied this, sachlegao, and then use it. So to make it plural, I change it to hasauchlegao. And I like to attach photos or images with my meanings. So now when I look at my 2 birds, this is what I think about them. Hasauchlegao, they're so noisy. Next, Kachtin will talk about our sessions where we study audio recordings together.
So whenever we can get together, a lot of what we're going over is whether it be old recordings or newer ones, or we haven't done any songs yet, but there's always history there that's maybe some people know it. Most of the time it's things that nobody knows anything about. So it's like uncovering old history, like I was saying, that's kind of right in front of us. And there's like a history, for instance, that referred to a whole village of people and they were wiped out in a day. And it's it's probably a sensitive story, but on the same hand, nobody knows it. So it's kind of like just erasing our own history by not sharing it, and people saying you can't tell our clan story, and that's a huge part of their clan story that most of them don't even know. And in this one that I'm referring to, there might not be anybody left because they all died. And in speaking to like with Elon here, we can isolate just a section of a recording, and just like writing out about parakeets, kind of get a rough idea of what they're saying, but type it out the best we can. Something that I still have trouble with is getting it spelled correctly. I feel like I can say a lot of it just offhand pretty good, but then when it comes to the spelling, Elon helps where I can just type it out and come back to it. And here is like getting it started is a challenge, but once you get it down, you have the utterance, the translation, the speaker initials, and then even the transcriber initials when you look at the whole dropout recording. So you can come back and see, I input a part of it, or whoever I'm working with might have put in the other part of it. We can always refer back to that and make corrections there, or see where we developed our own as we go. We can look back and see maybe we have it right now, but the last time we didn't have it right. And having the ability to isolate just one long phrase, just the way he speaks. He didn't refer to it as Shaka'i, which is what it used to be called, and now it's just called Glacier Bay. So even back in the 90s, he just said Glacier Bay. But the rest of what he says, practice just saying it with him as you're listening to it, trying to figure out how to spell it, because you could spend 10 minutes on just this 401 to 405, just trying to figure out how to say that. But saying it along with it helps you develop that skill, which is really key, especially as a beginner learner. So we haven't had a lot of beginners like sit in and listen with it, but it's something that's huge because you could just hear the same phrase over and over again. The next one. Oh.
Thanks, sorry. Kachtin and I have been meeting on Wednesday mornings over Zoom to listen to our audio hours together. And he generally will use Elon, and then I'll use a combination of Google Documents and Audacity. And that's just because partly I haven't quite learned how to use Elon yet. But I also think it is just pretty user-friendly. I can share this document with folks pretty easily and keep track. I keep track of the dates, and I have a column for Thinga in English. I keep a track of the title of the recording and the speaker and the time frame. So this is just another way to track your transcription practice. Another thing we should mention is that when we listen to the recordings, one of us will play the recording, and you make sure you share your computer sound, and then we'll like play it on loop over and over again, and I'll be typing along trying to keep track. And then at some point I just know I need it to be slower, so I'll like message him or tell him, can you slow the playback speed? And we'll generally go slower and slower and slower until we have a pretty close idea of what that utterance was. And then it's this entire process just takes us to a starting point. So when we bring it to class, you know, we can ask for corrections. The third element of building community together that a few of us have been using is just like hiking and being outdoors together. Kachtzin.
So being out together, whether it be on a hike or on a yauk or anything really, fire at the beach, reconnecting with our language and how, you know, helping each other out with things that maybe like I'm stuck on and she can help me with, or you know, where we can like build that up for each other. And being on the land too, like learning these place names while you're there. To me, like when I went to Seshui and I was looking at all these places where before I didn't know the name, and then I had it written on my phone and I was looking at it and I knew some of the history. Like it just made me feel more connected with my clan because I'm in a huge part of our history, and these are where big things happen. And now it's just a place, but just being there just kind of helps that healing, helps that confidence for me, especially to just be able to speak about it and know what they're saying. And then, you know, even for Anna as well, just bringing up, building up our confidence, and like how we speak with each other and knowing that we can tell somebody, you know, pretty confidently how to help them with doing the same thing, learning new phrases, learning ways to speak about things.
Another thing I wanted to mention about this is, you know, when you're being out on the land, it's a positive mental and emotional experience for you. So using that time to talk about the language, even if it's not an immersive hike or an immersive paddle, having that positive mental and emotional association with your language pathway for me is like a huge part of my learning journey and a part of my healing as a person as well.
So some like even when I was out here by Chapeya, even though I don't know the history behind Chapeya, I know I've been right up next to it and I've always heard about it, seen a picture about it, but all this whole area has so much history that I don't know a lot of, and some that I do know a little bit of. But I know my clan, my people have been there forever, and just for me, you know, going all these years, never being out there and finally getting to be there, and it was not the worst day in the world, was awesome because we got to really look at everything that was there. And this whole area is, people call it the Wash now. And even Achish, yeah, Asika, Dukhwatin, Yai, he's seen a whale jump and it landed right on a seine net and it scuttled the ship when he was 15, just right outside of the spot here. And that happens. There's so much wildlife out there. It's hard to believe that, you know, we're not still out there. Look at the next one. And so here's a better view of that Tlageya, and it's actually looking right across, right off to the Shinach. The right of this picture is looking right at this huge rock that is just loaded with tan and sa everywhere, right around there that you can get right up to. So some of it too is like teaching our kids, teaching the next generation, and like all of our common goal is to teach kids, so they can, like you said, and a lot of other people said, like we're building a fire and they got to make it bigger, and just them being around the language and using the language on their own without even telling them to do it is just, it's awesome to hear and awesome to see, especially like this day here. Go ahead. So yeah, when nobody told her to sing that, she just was having a blast paddling and sang it the whole way. Um, so even on the next slide here, holding each other up on our language path is just like moving a dugout. The only way to get there is working together. Most every time on a yauk, we'll sing a song, or we'll hear or see something, or ask, Tasaway or Tasaway Atin, or Wasaway to what is that? Where is that? What is that thing called? It's just things that we see that you don't always get to see because you're right there on the land. And trips like this day, go ahead. Every time having a yauk and being out on the water is it's awesome. I mean, not only lucky some days when it's really nice, but being able to be out there and just see everything around you and be on the land is it feels to me like it's really connecting more.
Sometimes Nawea calls me and makes me get up at 6 a.m. to go hiking with him. And he usually tries to kill a bird, and it's twice now that I've stopped him from doing it. Not because I don't want him to, but I'm usually on a time constraint, and I'm like, if you just injure it, we have to go chase it in the woods. And I'm gonna be late for my meeting, but I enjoy hiking with Nawea a lot. We live right down the road from each other. And again, even if we're not immersed in the language the entire hike, he's just the type to be thinking about how the language works a lot, which is an area where I need growth in my language learning. And so he has a really good command of classifiers. He remembers specific prefixes that go with a specific verb. He's pretty good at conjugating in his head, and his listening comprehension is better than mine. So I benefit a lot from our friendship, not just from the company, but I gain a lot of language skills just by hiking together and thinking and talking about the language. We talk about how to say things in Tlingit. And we talk about our abilities and room for growth over dinner. Some of the benefits of community study sessions are that you build relationships with each other, which just makes it easier to communicate overall because you have that trust. It contributes to a healthy community. We support each other's growth, we have fun. And this activity can lead to preparation for task-based learning. Kachtin mentioned that he wanted to expand this into hunting and being on the yacht specifically. So, as Deho told us, you can study recordings in advance to prepare for a task-based immersion activity. Listening to the audio helps us gain familiarity with stories. We get exposure to pronunciation, and just that we don't have to do it alone. In a pandemic, being alone at my computer with recording can be very isolating. So meeting with other people is a big help. Gonna choose playing.
Playing.
That's great. There's like Uski playing in there.
Well, the Gunaf Cheech is big enough for both of them. Okay. Yeah, that was fabulous. And so there's a number of things that we could talk about following that. One is a critical missing component is areas of language use. And I think about this stuff all the time. So if people want to learn Tlingit, I always think about this stuff. I've got 4 hours of their week. That's how much time I get with them. So it's always a question. And then I'm not organized, and I'm easily distracted. So then I'll be sitting there and I'll have a plan. I'll be like, hey, we should do this totally different thing. And then it's like this little voice in my brain is like, why don't you just take them down this road? I was like, yeah, let's go down that road. And so I would be the worst person to probably captain a boat to go somewhere. It's like, hey, look at that thing. Let's go look at that thing.
You know, next thing you know, it's been 7 years and we've just been on the water, right? But I do think about this stuff too, because I had a student recently talking to me about, you know, there should really be more repetition in the class. And I say, well, I think it's the student's job to go do the repetition part. Like I have a certain amount of time, I got to show people so much stuff. And we've read about these things as well, which is how on earth do you do this stuff? You've got so much information to pack in there, right? Like, and there's always like those of us who teach Tlingit, a lot of times we talk to each other and we're like, man, how do we teach this stuff and then this stuff and then this stuff and then this stuff? But then I think these use areas is probably one of the biggest missing components, which we have this Hayuk Dei program, and it was supposed to really fulfill a lot of that. But you know, COVID, and then also just sort of figuring out folks coming to Juneau, like it just didn't turn out the way a lot of folks thought it might. But regardless, I do think there needs to be jobs where someone's job is really to coordinate the social atmosphere of the language. And that's what I would just call it, right? And so that means organizing study sessions and then facilitating language use. But kind of coming back, we talked off the record before class about a number of just different things. And a huge part of language revitalization is actually personality management, right? Like how can we get people to do the same things and be around each other all the time? Because I remember the first place I went to college was a place called Mankato, Minnesota. And there was about 16,000 students at the college, and there were 16 Native American students. So we'd hang out with each other, and I would joke. I was like, we're like the Cheerios at the bottom of the bowl. We just like stick together, and we didn't get a pick. I don't even know I like very many of you, you know. And so like with language revitalization, you have so few people doing the thing that you've got to find ways to make it all gel together. You got different personalities, different other, and then throw in the online components, it gets really complicated. But and it can't be, I struggle with the university because they say, yeah, let's create these student tutor positions and these other student positions. I'm like, okay. Are we gonna pay them more than $10 an hour? And they said, no. I was like, well, I'm not gonna ask anybody to do it because I can't, that's so much work. And they could go anywhere in town just about and make more money. And so what does that say from a value perspective? But then those are things we can analyze. So maybe we got to go find some other money and make it happen. But what does happen is those who are teaching the language, you don't have enough energy to also be the person who creates these spheres. And so I think the spheres are right on what you folks are talking about. One is places of study with multiple different times and easy to find things, and everybody's welcome, because sometimes we do tend to form these groups, right? And then this group doesn't really work with that group, and that group doesn't like this group, and this group is a fan of this teacher, and that, you know, whatever. But then how do we sort of go to also spheres of use? And for use, those are also challenging things, because my experience is sometimes it turns into this huge series of lectures in English on how we need to be culturally Tlingit instead of just sort of speaking in the language. And so it's tricky, but I do think that that's a huge missing component, probably for every single language in Alaska, Yupik included, is like these use realms, which are becoming more and more rare for some languages, and for others, they just don't exist at all. Thoughts on that? So I wanted to show you folks a few different things that I utilize as well when you're talking about studying recordings and also using Elan. Like we're just going to go into some of this stuff, and I could show you folks some things that I do. So one is like documenting a speaker. I really enjoy documenting speakers and working with them. The first one I ever recorded was Shkate, Jesse Johnny. And then I recorded, so probably the next one after that was, well, I used to bring this little camera to language immersion sometimes. I got to go pull that footage at some point and look at it. And then getting someone to sort of just speak the language for you. And I've had some success with recording people who no one else could record, just hanging out with them and speaking with them in the language a lot and just really trying to convince them, we really want them to learn from your mouth. That's what I would usually say. And then, and just sort of, if they know you understand the language too, I think they're a lot more likely to just continue to give it to you, because my experience is they look at your eyes, and if you're just sort of lost, then they'll probably just stop. And I've seen people who were brought in and paid to tell a story in the language and said, nobody's gonna understand me, why should I do this, And, and so like really trying to convince them to stay in. But then once you have that recording, I do try to get it in, like I'm moving from 1080 to 6K, and then like it's a lot of gear, it's a lot of stuff, but I think get a camera that you're familiar with too would be wonderful. So that one, you can get a good close view of their face, and then you can have another that sort of shows their body, because there's just a lot of things we can gather, especially if you have 2 or 3 people talking, and there's a lot of stuff we could pick up on, like how do you take turns? How do you say I want to talk? And how do you sort of just be in a conversation, right? And so I think there's a lot you can gather. I use those little clip-on microphones. I got some that are called Sennheisers. I really like them. They're pretty expensive. I think you can easily spend $10,000 to $20,000 on just your video and audio equipment. But then someone also has to know how to run that stuff, and someone has to know how to take care of that stuff, because it could get lost, or stuff gets spilled. There's a million little parts that go to everything. Got to have your batteries charged and everything. So if you're going to do some language documentation, charge all the batteries the night before. Use rechargeable batteries, because I think they just last longer, and it's just more responsible as far as environmental concerns. And then hold on. I'm gonna have a lamp next week. I don't care. Nobody's gonna fix this problem for me. Got all these languages to work on. I can't even keep a freaking light on. Okay. So then try and get the microphone onto your speaker, and then have them try and get them to talk at the level they're going to talk at. And if you know them, you might have to sort of understand how to turn the volume up and down. Because if it's on this, so sometimes a clip-on mic goes to this little box, and on that little box, that's where you control how sensitive the microphone is. And so I recorded King Gisti, and I was like, could you talk? Like, how are you going to talk? So he's like, King Gisti, Shango Kedi Hatsati. I was like, okay. So I said it. And I was like, okay, let's go. He's like, talk away. It's like he just blew the whole thing. I couldn't use it. It was just so distorted, and I couldn't use it. So there's like let that be a lesson. Like, know your speaker, know how loud they typically like to be. Because if it's too low on the microphone, you could turn it up on the camera. But if it's too high, and like you can't, once it gets distorted, you can't turn it down. But if it's too low, then when you turn it up, it's going to bring all the what they call the noise floor up. So the noise floor is if you got a circulation system here, if it's raining outside, if there's people talking in the background, it's going to pick all of that stuff up. A little clip-on microphone is designed to sort of pick up mostly the speaker, but it will pick up the whole room too. But then a lot of times a camera can only have 2 inputs. So if you have 5 speakers, then sometimes you got to get yourself a shotgun microphone. And they could be really expensive, but it just sort of zeroes in on your target and picks up less. There was a speaker in Carcross named Art Johns, who was a country singer. He's a really wonderful, nice person. And one time I was recording these 2 sisters, and it was a beautiful conversation. And he came walking in, and it was like at a camp, so it's got a wood floor, and everything's hollow and loud, just wooden walls. And he walked in with his cowboy boots, and it was just like clump, clump, clump. I was looking at him, but he's an elder, so I just came up to him afterwards. I was like, cowboys just don't walk softly, do they? And he said, no, they don't. Because he's got a big cowboy hat and stuff. He was such a nice guy. But You always got to be ready for that too. There was another elder I was recording, is telling a beautiful, wonderful story, and some guy starts choking on his lunch, and then he had to like leave. And I felt bad because I was probably glaring at him like, "What are you doing, choking during this recording?" But these things are going to happen. But try and find out if there are things that are loud in the room that you can maybe get rid of. Like you might have to turn off the generator for the recording, or you might have to move certain things outside or shut them off while the recording is going on. Because that's your chance. That's your chance to document the speaker. Uh, I think some other right on cue. You also got to have some decent lighting, right? So sometimes you get good lighting as far as the sunlight goes. But I recorded these two speakers one time. They're living in um, an assisted living home in Whitehorse, and I wish I had brought some kind of light in there because it was so dim and you could hardly see them. And the camera, if you got a camera that does autofocus, it gets real confused. And so I'd recommend not like get your focus by hand, set up your cameras by hand. One of the speakers was in a wheelchair and she kept rolling back and forth. And so you got to kind of be ready for some of that stuff. And if you like, cinematography and photography and stuff, like you could really have a lot of fun. But I do think you should have a high quality image because it's going to last. There's so many speakers that we have, and it's like just a little, you know, not even DVD quality. And we're watching it these days, and you blow it up, and it's just super grainy. But then having good, clean audio, and then you can clean up that audio too through a variety of different things, depending on how much you want to invest. If you were to invest in some stuff, like there's a million camera options, so find something you're familiar with and where the settings are easy to access. There's a ton of YouTube videos you can watch. Go find someone, if you have the ability to document language and there's not very many speakers, like just go get some money. Go find some money. There's sometimes your corporation can pay for it, your tribe can pay for it. Sometimes you get humanities forum grants and stuff like that. But they can have a nice set of gear so you could take it to a community. And you might go there and there's one speaker left in that community, and you might be the one who has the opportunity to record them. And I get a lot of inspiration from Nora Dowenhauer, who said she used to just haul this big recorder around. People would call her a beatnik and they'd make fun of her. And then she'd ask, and the elders all say, no, I don't, that thing is weird. I don't want to be recorded in it. But she said it wasn't long before she was getting phone calls, and her auntie would say, your uncle's dying, and he says he wants you to record him one more time. So she just jumped on a plane and just ran over to Huna and recorded David Kadishan. Because odds are some of these speakers that you might have, if you don't have very many speakers left, even if you teach people how to speak, no one's going to be able to speak like them for a long, long time. There's going to be like some really high level stuff that they know how to do. So then to process this, and I'll put together a list of stuff that I use if you folks want to see it. Like here's what I use, get what works for you, but here's some suggestions. So a shotgun mic, 2 of the clip-on mics, 2 nice cameras, and then you're going to have a computer that can do this stuff, and you're going to have a person who, wow, turn back on, who can do this stuff. And so as you move, every time the cameras get nicer, like 6K, it's insane. It's insane how much memory is going to be required. So you're probably going to need, if you're going to be making videos, you probably need at least 8 terabytes of storage. You're going to have a good process of getting your video off the cards onto the storage into your computer so you could render it and then archive it so you do not lose it. I have lost things that I've recorded with speakers, and it breaks my heart when I think about it, because I think, oh, I can't remember everything that they told me. I just can't. So then when you pull it off your system, and I would usually work in the audio separate from the video. For the video, I'm just trying to sort of figure out, do I need a little title thing to say their name and their whatever information you think needs to be on there, their indigenous name, their clan or affiliation, their village perhaps. And then you get the video kind of ready where you want, and really you're just sort of cutting in and out. If there's anything that you need to cut out of there, you can go ahead. But I try to keep it more or less continuous, so it's almost like someone was there in the room. In the audio, I pull it into this program. This might be the last thing I've got time to show you. And I might have shown you folks this before. There is this program called iZotope RX. This is 7. I think 8 is out now. It's going to cost you about $1,000. But I do think it's worth it. And actually, let's see. So this is what this audio sounds like. Oh, I might have to do this share again. Hold on. I'm just going to share my whole screen. Okay. So here, let me make this bigger. So this is what the program looks like. So you can see the audio. This orange stuff here is noise. This is showing you how much background noise is in the recording. When you have older recordings, it's going to have more background noise. But it could be just the humming of the refrigerator. If you go to record an elder, and if their refrigerator is loud, you might unplug it. But this is what you do, is you put your car keys on top of that plug or something like that. That way when you go to leave, you don't forget to plug their fridge back in and melt all their dang food. Don't mess up your elders' lives. Just always make their lives better and give them money. I've got a real simple template that says, I agree to be recorded. I agree to let the university use my recording. Because the other thing that could happen is they could pass away and their family says, we don't want that out there. Those things happen. It's unusual. It's a little bit of a strange thing to deal with, but I usually work directly with the elder. I pay them at least $100 an hour. If I can find more money than that, I get it to them. But I pay them at least $100 an hour. And I think these days it should probably be $150 to $200 an hour. But we'll just listen to this and then we'll go ahead and sign off. So if I just listen to this, let's see, where's my play button? Oh, hold on. Okay. Oh wait, I know where I gotta send it. Let me see if this works. So the reason I like this is because the program does a lot of stuff for you. So there's this repair assistant button, which I would probably use, and then just listen closely to what it's suggesting, and it can get rid of a lot of mouth clicks and noise and breathing for you. But there's this other one down here called spectral denoise. And what this does is it listens to everything and it just gets rid of the background noise, tape hiss, low rumbling. So if I hit this preview button, I'm going to toggle this compare. Oops, this bypass. So you hear all this hiss, and the hiss is gone.
That's how good it is that you got rid of it all the way. I don't think I could.
It's not the easiest thing to hear, but in some recording, you will like this spectrum, and it takes like this recording is like 45 minutes long. So if I hit render, it says it's going to tell me how long it'll take. It'll probably take like an hour. Oh, the audio didn't come through? Oh, shucks. Okay, hold on. Hold on. This kind of thing happens when you're using these audio programs for some reason. They like to route the audio pretty specifically. Let me try this. How about now?
Good.
Okay.
قاعدة نخوش كتير وكيف
Like,
خودوا شو
there's a little bit of hiss, there's a little bit of reverb in that room that you can hear. But I'm going to hit this spectral repair button again. Oops, not that one. The spectral denoise, sorry. Spectral denoise. And then if I hit preview, I'm going to toggle this bypass button, and then you should be able to hear the difference.
Goed. Ik dacht dat ik huis gekeken. Ja, dat doe ik niet. Het is ook niet.
So it cleans it up by itself. There's also not a lot of if you could do this stuff in programs like Audition, but it starts to sound weird. And if you got a recording that's got a lot of hiss in it, you can run it through twice. So it's a very powerful program. It's really good. Maybe the next time we got a few extra minutes, I'll show you Elon as well. So it's a great program. It's clunky in a lot of ways too, and just learning how to set up files and just get to the thing is a huge step. But one is like documenting the language, and then two, using that as a teaching tool, and then also to publish stuff. Like you need probably a book of stories and a book of speeches and and you could use those to teach from. And then there's a lot that you can do, and I do think it opens the doors quite a bit if you have a published version of that as well, which you should do yourself, so some university doesn't come and tell you that their lawyers are coming because you're using the stuff that they got from your own language anyways. So, but yeah, so sometimes it can change it, but I think when I looked at different things, I do think this iZotope is probably the best thing that's out there right now. And so I'm involved with iHeartMedia, and we're making like podcasts and stuff. They use it on their podcasts, and so it's used by audio professionals. If you don't have the money for it, talk to me. We can brainstorm, figure out some things. I can clean up recordings for folks. I don't always have the time to do it, but we can also examine some ways that we can put together some gear lists for you folks, and then go try and find some money for you so you can go get it and have good stuff. Okay, awesome job. Come Monday, I'm just going to turn it over to our list of folks. Do we need to revisit the list of folks who signed up for Monday in the order that we all signed up in? Okay, we'll do that real quick, assuming I can find it.
I think I was first for the midterm project presentation.
Uh-huh.
Okay, yeah, I think I was scheduled to go first or volunteered.
All right. That sounds great. If you hang tight for just a second, I'll pull up what I have. When was that? Oh, here it is. I just see co-ownership. Okay, it looks like Hukyunsk, Golden Teban, Duck Juice, Jinkasa Heather, Sani Kakachgun. So that's our list for now. I'll type in the chat. It's just gonna look kind of clunky, but that's what it looks like in the chat room. So that's gonna be our roster. So
I might have to move mine. I might have to go to Heidelberg. I'll let you know if I have to change mine.
Oh, okay. I hope you get to go. I hope it's good that you're going anyways.
Oh, no, no, I have to go for my NANA service. I'll let you know.
So sorry. So, yeah, well, why don't we just reschedule you anyway so that you don't have to worry about it.
Oh, I am.
We have enough people to fill Monday. So,
Okay, that would be good.
okay. Yeah, and much love to you and your family. Yeah, okay, so Monday we'll start with Hukyunsk, and then Duck Juice, Jinkasa Heather, and then towards the end we'll also sort of make our list of folks who are going to go after. I'm going to stop the recording.